Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. Welcome, everybody. So I thought that instead of giving a Dharma talk tonight, I would hold a discussion about the role and nature of a student in this tradition. We had a really lovely time this afternoon reading from Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche and Longchenpa, and it reminded me, the particular text we were reading, of in the ancient scriptures of the Indian Tantras, there are many, many lists of what qualifications a good teacher should have, what qualifications a good student should have. And of course, they have certain characteristics, usually highly idealized. I was joking around that these lists of the qualities that teachers and students should have, all of them would need to be totally enlightened to manifest all of those qualities, in which case you wouldn't need a teacher. So, however, when we think of this kind of tradition, and for the benefit of people who are new, this main tradition that I teach in is called Trika Shaivism, and it's a tradition from North India. It's one of several what are called direct realization traditions, where the idea is that you work with a teacher and you get some practices like mantra and meditation and other things that help you to directly perceive through your own senses and mind the real nature of reality, your own essence nature, and then be able to just relax and rest in that. In these traditions, the relationship between the teacher and the student is one of the main practices, if not the main practice. Learning how to deal with the teacher helps you to learn how to deal with other people. That's the most concrete level. And I wanted to throw it open to you all who have been here, and anybody who has anything to add. What do you feel are the qualifications of a student in this tradition? What do you feel are your qualifications for studying in this tradition? What do you feel is needed that maybe you need to manifest more? What have you noticed about being a student in this tradition, about how it is and what's required of you? So anything along those lines. We could come up with a list, but we could also have a fuller discussion about your experience as a student and what you feel you have brought to this practice and that is contributing and appropriately to you being a student in this kind of tradition. These traditions are called traditions of the fast path. They're a little more confrontational than some other traditions might be, a little more raw, and a little less rule-bound. So they can be kind of rough and tumble or even scary. They demand a lot of people, both of the teacher and the student. And basically, by the time you show up in one of these direct realization traditions, if you resonate with it, if you show up and you think, oh, this is for me, you are ready for that. You're, in some sense, ready to have your concepts about yourself and life dismantled. Not everybody wants that. So
the ones that came up to me that I guess I either have or work towards having is honesty, for sure. Honesty, like basic honesty, just like not telling lies. And then also like honesty with like where I'm at and who I am, and this not trying to be something I'm not, which, is I think harder work for me than not telling lies. And then curiosity for sure. And sincerity, I think those three really stand out.
One thing that I think about, or that's important, is just my desire to be here. And I feel like that's a major qualification. I second what
Probably the number one
yeah.
that you want to.
But I think about that, when I sit down to practice or when I come to events, but I mostly when I sit down and practice, I'm like, I'm doing this because I want to. And I think another one for me that I work on a lot is humility. Just kind of putting my head down, what you say, in terms of walking barefoot on the ground and remembering that desire, remembering what it is that I want as much as I can.
Ooh, patience.
Oh, yeah. We need patience. A lot of patience. Truckloads of patience. What are your qualifications?
Well, self-reflection, I feel like, is the one.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not honesty.
Although you just said
Not
that.
honesty. Yeah, right.
I was thinking, like, the word that keeps coming to me is willingness. And, like, willingness in a lot of different areas. Willingness to have your secrets exposed and, like, the things you don't want to notice about yourself exposed, and, like, a willingness to be uncomfortable, and a willingness to follow and go along. I have varying levels of willingness, but I think that one of the things that I rely on is, I feel like when I get reflection, I can feel it. I can host it. I can host the reflection even when I really don't want to be seeing it. So I think that's a big one for me. And then the things that I struggle with are probably equally numerous. Constancy and, like, really going for it. The stuff that takes real fire and vigor.
Verve.
Another V words. Another thing that's coming to me that I rely on is, like, I feel like an unshakable confidence that this is right for me. And just having that is so relaxing. I don't have to, like, do questioning around it.
Renegotiate your commitment.
Right. It's just there.
Anybody who's not in this tradition, feel free to say what you think is the qualification of a path. It doesn't have to be this path.
I would say in this context, especially listening, be it that I don't know a lot about this world or this community specifically, I'm eager to be listening a lot today, so maybe quiet, but eagerly listening.
Eagerness is a good qualification.
Yeah.
My teacher, Nana Maima, was once asked, how can I self-realize? She said, ask that question with desperate eagerness.
I think in a path that attracts me is love. The love has to be the most evident thing. It has to be something that is so obvious. That's the big thing.
So the love of the student?
Or you asked about the path, right?
Well, I asked about, we spend, in our culture today, we spend a lot more time analyzing teachers than we do analyzing student.
Yeah.
So we analyze what makes a good teacher or good teachings, but we rarely think, well, what is a good student? How does a good student show up? So in the ancient scriptures, there's equal weight given to both. These long lists of, beautiful in form and limb and honest and dedicated and serene and, like, okay, wait, what? So I am raising the question, how do you see the role of the student, the qualification of the student, what makes a good student, what does a student need on a path? Any of that range, in that range of questions.
Devotion.
I agree with that.
Certainly the elephant between the teacher and student, certainly for the student that you speak of often, is doubt. And how you often say, that someone that has no doubt isn't teachable, and someone that I feel like as a student, I'm always kind of dancing with how to work with doubt in a skillful way. Could you speak to that a bit?
Doubt of what?
Well, doubt of the relationship with the teacher, doubt of the tradition, um, you know, in varying degrees. Just feeling it rise up as as the distractions of the world come in, the distractions, the seductions of the world, pay attention to this, pay attention to this. It feels like, for me, it feels like being able to relax with the doubt and not give it a whole lot of meaning is something that helps ground me in the relationship with teacher and teachings. That quality of relaxing with doubt. Does that make sense?
Relaxing in the sense of not freaking out because you have doubts, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Not feeding it.
I mean, like, for instance, if you read Atmananda's diary, Death Must Die, Atmananda was a disciple of Anandamayi and lived in Ma's ashrams most of her adult life. And there she was, living in proximity to an avatar, basically, an incredibly enlightened person. And still, sometimes she would write in her diary, I don't know if Ma's a fake or what. She went around and around and around. And that was just part of her process. So doubts can arise in two different ways in terms of the teachings or the tradition and the teacher. One is that your ordinary mind, your karmas, your conventional, contracted ideas about things can just be throwing up doubts for the sake of it, to try to wrench you away from something that your fixations know, or the death knell of your fixations. So when we think of our different habit patterns, they want to survive. They have a will to survive. And when you start doing spiritual practice, they kick up a ruckus because they can kind of see the writing on the wall, that their lifespan has just been shortened by your activity in a spiritual tradition. And so they will literally fight for their lives and throw up all kinds of ridiculous things, and you can take them seriously or not. Those are the kind of doubts that you should try not to let distract you, and you can sort of feel the quality of those kinds of doubts. They're just like the yammering, right? And then we can have doubts that are like serious questions about things. What does this mean? And is this real? And what just happened? Those kinds of doubts. And those kinds of doubts we should investigate. And we should bring those to the teacher or into our practice or readings or however. We should try to answer those kinds of doubts that are real questions about the efficacy of something, the effectiveness of something, or does the teacher really know what they're talking about? Do they really embody the teachings? Those kinds of things we should ask. But even asking those things, if you are going to say, I am the student of so-and-so, and you're going to devote a significant amount of your life to studying with someone in some certain tradition, there has got to be confidence also. There cannot be just doubt. Or there cannot be just doubt and then ordinariness. In this kind of tradition, I'm not saying in every tradition, I'm just saying in this kind of tradition, there must be some kernel of recognition of the state of the teacher, and that is what you are going for. That is what you want. And you have to feel confidence in that, and you have to feel some resonance, some really heart-based, mind-based resonance with the tradition. People want to have someone to help them. And they often want to be part of a community. And then maybe sometimes people even have pride, and you find people like the guru is sort of like an accessory, You have your bracelets and your earrings, and then you have your guru. So people try very, very hard to convince themselves sometimes that somebody is their guru. People have done this to me, Somebody wrote to me and said, someone I'd never met and who had never been to a teaching, I've never been to any of your teachings, but I tell everyone you're my guru. Is that okay? I was like, well, you can do whatever you want. I mean, how can you answer that? You don't want to be trying to have a guru. If you find yourself in that position, that's not a good position to be in. You don't want to be in a position where you're like talking yourself into somebody being your teacher. You can try to talk yourself out of it. That's a much better position to be in. In other words, if you already have this inner recognition that someone is your teacher and that these teachings are for you, then if ordinary mind tries to talk you out of it, that's fine. Your innate wisdom will win out anyway, no matter how much you try to talk yourself out of it. But if you're trying to talk yourself into it and there's no real confidence there, then that's not a good situation. That's just some sort of thing that you're doing to yourself, some trick that you're trying to play on yourself for whatever reason. It could be just honest longing or pride. I don't know.
I came with a sense of longing and curiosity, and I think willingness to show up, and even when it's not comfortable or it's weird or things come up that I never would have expected, and my world has been rocked and my mindset just
Messed with.
oh yes. But just something in me says keep showing up, just keep sitting down and doing my practices and keep coming. And I guess one vein, like all throughout that, is just still this sort of longing and curiosity to see and to know what's there.
Longing is the number one qualification, desire. Everything runs by that. It is impossible to have a deep spiritual practice without experiencing longing, because longing is a Shakti that pulls you along. It keeps you going through the most difficult times. And what are we longing for? We're longing for something that we already know. That's the wonderful thing. You cannot long for something you don't know. So what you are longing for, which is to reconnect with essence nature, find your own essence nature, to find God, if you will, this is something we already know because it's who we are, and it's just obscured. And longing is the Shakti, it's the energy that is going to propel us to do that work that we need to do, to rediscover who we are, to remember. So without longing, there's no fuel for the practice.
I really feel, for me, it's courage. I also agree with a lot of qualities people have talked about for me, but right now I just feel like the courageous heart, like that warrior heart in myself that just keeps going when I don't want to, and that shows up. And then on a very practical level, I also feel like it's respect for the teachings in a way that we show up on time and like we're ready to go before the teaching begins, and like we don't put our feet out at you, and just like those basic things that show deep respect for you, the teachings, and myself, really, of why I'm there. Yeah, so timeliness, I guess.
Yeah, there are some teachers in this tradition and in other wisdom traditions like Ayurveda and Jyotish, astrology. There's some teachers who are, I'm pretty traditional, but there's some teachers more traditional than I am, who if you show up late for something, that's it. You're gone. My Jyotish teacher got fed up with the laxity and disrespect of students that were coming to her teaching. She just decided to stop teaching. She just was like, forget it. So now she only teaches one-on-one with students she knows are going to show respect and be committed. This is a part of the tradition from ancient times. And in fact, in ancient times, teachers would put you through very rigorous tests before they would accept you as a student.
I'd like to talk about hard work and effort, because it's something that I struggle with myself, but I observe in abundance in the community, and the hard work and effort it takes to host people and to commit to a practice and to do things with heart and in a very beautiful way. So I think that's such an important qualification.
Agreed. This is the most unified, hardworking community I've ever been a part of, for sure. Most spiritual communities are much more lax and all over the place and non-cooperative, non-collaborative, or only collaborative in small pockets. But in this community, everybody who's committed to the practice is working together and putting a tremendous amount into it through their seated practice, their time coming to teachings, their seva, keeping Jaya Kula running, their money, everything. You all really own this community. It's a very extraordinary situation. And it's all being done by householders, not people in ashrams, by and large people with jobs and families and, lots of other stuff going on.
So the two things that have been really coming to my mind that I see as relation with each other are that thing about desire and then also taking responsibility. I don't personally experience a whole lot of doubt. I experience more like this highly wavering capacity in myself, and it's not coming from doubt. It's just coming from fixations and my tensions. But the way I try to just ride the waves of that is by staying connected to my desire, because I know that's the only thing that will help me create more capacity. And then also related to that is the imperative to take responsibility for myself and for the nourishment of my own desire, and also my contributions to the community. And I try to, when I see myself kind of having the inclination to not contribute in some way or to pass an opportunity to contribute by, to recognize that in doing that, I'm having the expectation that someone else will do it. And I know that everyone's in the circumstances that you just described, where everyone has commitments and everyone has other things that they're doing and other responsibilities, and that if I don't contribute it, that's just passing the buck to someone else in the community. And so for me, taking responsibility for that also, and recognizing that I have a part to play in creating the community that I want to be a part of, and to not have the expectation that other people will do that for me. So yeah, that sense of desire and that sense of responsibility are really big ones.
So I feel like the thing, I would say the number one thing that I rely on is openness. And it kind of expresses itself in a few ways. One is just an openness to new concepts that don't make sense at first, or are against something that I previously thought, or, et cetera. When presented with a new concept, my first instinct is not to wrestle with you, but to wrestle within myself to make it make sense. And some of that is human realm stuff. Some of it isn't all that dharmic. Some of it really is just openness and curiosity and wanting to try that concept on and just see. And then I think the other way that the openness kind of expresses itself is through a willingness to be vulnerable. I don't really mind being called out. I don't embarrass that easily. I don't mind share. I'm an oversharer, really. I mean, occasionally I get embarrassed, and occasionally, other things happen. But for the most part, I do feel a sense of just embracing vulnerability, and the fact that this, if I do get called out in a way that's embarrassing to me, or if I do something that offends somebody in the group, if I'm just a bull in a china shop, which is how I often feel, that this is a community where even if people don't like it, they're taking responsibility too for their reaction to me. And so there's a sense of, even though there's sense of exposure, there's that sense of safety. Anyway, so I feel like just a willingness to be vulnerable. And then the thing that I think that I really continue to try to work with is just a deeper desire to wake up. That and having a consistent practice. And I've finally gotten to the point where for several months now I do practice every day. So that's a huge step, because that took me, 2 years of being 2.5 years, I don't know, being in this group, and then finally just being able to count on myself to do that. But I need more of that, because I want to be doing it for longer every day, and I want to not make excuses around how much I need to get done and how I don't have time to practice.
Because I remember years ago when I started, my biggest thing was I didn't want to change anything about myself. And I was pretty much on the outskirts of the community. And that was the first thing that had to go before I even stepped in. As I go along, I'm seeing some qualifications develop. The longing is the recognition of longing and how it's driving my life. That is like really comforting that the force is already there. I just have to follow it. It's not like walking in the in the dark or something. It's directed.
Mm-hmm.
So as a student, I feel like those couple of things are pretty empowering.
Clarity, having at least a little bit of a spark of clarity and sensitivity to feeling what's happening or being able to look at what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. And also fortitude, coming back again and again, regardless of the situation, regardless of what emotional state I'm in, sitting down to practice, coming to teachings, I think is really important.
Fortitude's a good one.
I think for me, it's showing up to play, like be a part of it. I think I bring good cheer and I bring heart to things, and that's gotten me here. So I think that's what I bring.
One of the things that I felt my whole life is like a desire to discover. And here I struggled with expressing myself and like just holding my cards too close to my chest with everything. But I've also at the same time like been just discovering more of my own capacity in certain ways, and just like been able to express myself in certain ways, like with kirtan. Like I remember just shaking the whole time I played at Kashi House with like a few people, and now I just feel like I can just like jump into a groove with it and enjoy it, and I have more of a feeling of like celebrating what I have inside. Like I have more of a feeling of celebration. And today during the teaching, like just being able to hear that text and know that it's happening in front of me, and just celebrating inside, like that I am participating in these things that, like when I first came around, it was like way more intellectual and way more conceptual, and now it's just like this glorious thing that I get to be a part of. I think it's just that, it's like that fortitude too, because I have so many limitations. It's like I just keep sort of walking day by day and trying to be consistent and trying to let go of thinking that the things that I have that are limitations are such a big deal.
I would say for me it is desire and longing and the willingness to be seen and to reach in and feel when I'm in my own way, when I feel contraction, and just to remember teacher and teachings that I really am here, that what I want is to open my heart.
Honesty came to mind, and also I've always had a certain amount of enthusiasm and persistence and diligence, sweetness too.
The things I've discovered I have is a certain amount of fierceness, and that showed me how determined I am. And I think that's a good quality as a student, and also I discovered I have discipline. And I think the sense of humor is also something that I play with. So I think these three things are.
There's nothing worse than a fierce, determined, earnest person.
I had one more thing. I think one thing that I think is kind of essential for being a student, and one thing that I think I've had a greater capacity for is participation in community and or even on the cushion. Just feel like my capacity for participation on the cushion is greater than my capacity to participate in the community. But something that last night in the puja, I just kind of realized some stuff about my participation in this community and my level of participation. It's not that I don't participate, it's the type of participation that I'm engaged in. And I feel like it's not, ever since I've been around, it's never been full or thorough or, it's kind of just been skating by, I feel like. And it certainly was worse before, but I definitely still feel it. I think that's essential, participating.
On many different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of which is that in this kind of tradition, by and large, if you look at the various teachers from these kinds of traditions, they very, very often organize some kind of large-scale game or situation or something for students to participate in. And as a way of having a field for waking up, a field for sadhana that is working with other people. Bureaucracy is one of the fields that has come out of me. So on that level, like participating is working in the field of dharma, working in the field of sadhana, as it has manifested in this community. I mean, and there are other fields too. It's not just bureaucracy, but so that there's that. In addition to getting out of your iPod and being in a harmonizing situation, especially when you're really tight-knee, to be working with other people in a situation where you have to harmonize your energies with them is good for tight and realm. I don't know what all you were thinking about, but there's a lot of different levels to do with working in the way that we do together so closely and living together so closely. And not being in an ashram situation, there's a lot of other things pulling on our attention. Would you like to say something?
I think the most important thing, initially at least, is desire and ultimately devotion. And I don't know, for me, I can say that when I first came around, which has been a long time now.
It's been, yeah.
I can't believe that, actually.
How long have you been here?
I think 4 years. Something like maybe 5.
I think more than 4.
I think this is the 5th year. I don't know. I was just thinking while everyone was talking however long it's been, how dramatically different my life is now than it was. I was married when I first met you, which a lot of people probably don't even know that. And it was my whole ordinary life situation was just so radically different. And I remember meeting you and coming to teachings, and I did foundations right away, and I was like blown away. And I felt like my desire, I didn't even know what I desired. I just felt like there was this desire to do the practice. Mm-hmm. And that's all I knew. I didn't even really know why or what I wanted out of it. And I felt like that was just my driving force for like a solid year and a half. I felt like that took me a long way. And I think if I hadn't have had that, I probably would have dropped off early on. So I'm really glad that I had that kind of different life circumstance. And I think that's still the thing that pulls me along. I mean, I know I struggle with pretty much all the things that everyone mentioned about being a student, being seen especially, but just showing up and following that desire, however limited it might feel at times, and continuing to participate, to the best of my ability in bureaucracy and showing up and helping host and, just being a part of the community whenever I can. And the biggest thing I've struggled with is just keeping that desire at the forefront and when my life has gotten really hard, and especially I know a lot of people know I've been really sick in the last year, and like having that desire to just sit down and do practice when I've been sick a lot has been really hard. Yeah, that's been my biggest struggle this year.
I'm glad you're still here.
Me too.